To do this, we have to bear in mind the old kind of saying of those who refuse to learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it. We're going to look at comparisons between the current the current I'm giving the clue away, the current American Republic and the Roman Republic. It's a potentially worrying time. I don't want to be alarmist and I don't want to kind of scare people and stuff, but there's a lot of parallels here between what is happening in today's American Republic and what happened in the ancient Roman Republic, which we're going to get into now. But before we do any of that, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, yeah? And check out all the rest of my videos, yeah? All of them. Especially go through the ones which don't have many views. Really get into this and stuff, yeah? Like we're really starting to pick up steam with this channel. We're starting to really get somewhere. Within the space of this last month, it's really been popping off. And yeah, we're going to cover some more great content like this. And yeah, as time goes on, it's going to build, it's going to grow into more and more things. We're going to cover more and more areas. Yeah, I'm getting different people hitting me up with like different suggestions for things, being like, oh, can I do this for you? Kind of etc, etc. So really loving the support, really loving the enthusiasm. It's nice when both friends and even complete strangers are hitting me up and saying, wow, what you're doing is really, really good. Keep up the good work. Yeah, it's really encouraging. Yeah, so really appreciate that. Anyway, back to the video. Right, so now we're going to talk about the fall of the Roman Republic. The American founding fathers, as we said, looked to different forms of government, yeah, across the world and throughout the great expanse of world history. And they looked at, for instance, the Athenian democracy, which we covered in the history of democracy video, right? So definitely check that out. As we said in the last video, yeah, James Madison famously said that democracies have been short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. The American founding fathers wanted the American system to last for many, many centuries, yeah, and they didn't want something which was going to last for maybe 100 years and then spiral into anarchy, right? When a democracy fails, yeah, it will go into anarchy and then there will be tyranny that rises up from it. They looked at the oldest system that lasted the longest amount of time, and they thought actually the Spartan system, yeah, which I got wrong in one of the previous videos by saying that I believe in the fascism video. I said, so definitely check that out, yeah, but bear in mind that I got that slightly wrong. So I said in that Sparta was basically a dictatorship. This wasn't necessarily true. So the king in time of war could take on an immense amount of power and stuff, yeah, but only with regard to how to actually wage that war and stuff, right? You had, for all intents and purposes, a republican-ish kind of system, right? So there was checks and balances on the power of the king and stuff. And actually, there was two kings in Sparta, one from one line of family and one from another line of family. And so there was this balancing act. The ancient Romans, yeah, in 509 BC, they overthrew their king, right? Because their king was very corrupt. Because they're very influenced by Greek culture. They looked at Sparta and thought, actually, that's a better model to go down. So this is where you had the two consuls. So these are basically the two executives, the two kings or presidents, modern terms. And with these two, there was this constant balancing of power, right? And each of them could only serve for a number of years before new ones could be chosen, etc. And there's a 10-year gap between if you were consul then, you'd have to wait 10 years before you could have a chance of being consul again, right? You also had the other different branches of government at a lower level, you had the Senate, which is basically the aristocracy of Rome, the nobility of Rome. They couldn't pass laws as such, but at the same time they were heavily involved in the lawmaking process and stuff. And also as well, like you said, the plebeians, yeah, the people of Rome, they also had a say in how things could be done at election time, right? And that system there lasted for almost 500 years, and for the first 400 years of that system, there was no serious political violence or instability in Rome. So if you think about it, America's lasted for 244 years, right? Since the Declaration of Independence, and their constitution has lasted for just over something around the region of 230. If it's lasted for this amount of time, and we'll really start to see problems, yeah, that's in comparison to the Roman Republic, which lasted for a lot longer than that without any of these issues. What caused a breakdown of the Roman Republic? Much in the same way as we're seeing with America now. The Republic, for all intents and purposes, yeah, while it said it didn't want a king, Why I said he didn't want an emperor, it was becoming an empire, right? It was expanding more and more. And we've seen this with America, obviously, yeah. Like the American empire as such, yeah, like it had some minor colonies, but it's more just in terms of the military and economic like kind of power projection like that the United States has across the world, right? And most countries in the world are within its sphere of influence. And at the time when I was growing up, America was the global hegemon, like unquestioned. Yeah, China hadn't risen yet. Russia had just like collapsed, like kind of like the fall of the Soviet Union. So it was unrivaled. It could do whatever it wanted. Yeah, it was Pax Americana, as they said. Yeah, like the American peace. Yeah, like, and in this time, there was like more global stability. There was a rise of democracy, like the rise of living standards, less wars, everything like kind of like. So it wasn't like perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it was preferable, I would argue, than the system that it had been before. At the same time, having one state having that much power is corrupting both for those nations which fall outside its sphere of influence and for those which are within its sphere of influence, and most importantly, for the host nation itself. So America, its military power, like the power of the president, the power of its government, went far beyond anything that the founding fathers could ever have imagined, nor ever would have imagined. Washington DC, the Pentagon, like the CIA, all these things, the power that it wields around the world and within America itself is extraordinary in comparison to what the founders would have imagined. Much in the same way with the Roman Republic, when it was just a few little bits of territory on the Mediterranean coast of Italy, it didn't really matter so much. But when you start to conquer more and more land, become more and more powerful, and the economy grows and people become wealthy, etc., income inequality sharply rose in Rome, and income inequality sharply rose in America. And for the plebeians, like kind of ancient Rome, much as the kind of the left behind like in America, right, there ends up being a lot of like discontent, ends up being a lot of anger and a lot of frustration. Like, well, the game's clearly rigged. There's clearly like corruption because there's an element to which people are becoming very wealthy through their own means and through legitimate means, and that's good for them and stuff. Yeah. At the same time, the economic prosperity is not shared for all. Wages are stagnated. In some places, they've gone down in real terms. Life expectancy, for the first time in all of America's history, is starting to decline amongst certain groups. Certain towns are now like that were once booming like in industrial like kind of heartlands, yeah, and now become like the Rust Belt. Have now become like waste places. They've become like kind of like ghost towns, right? If you don't have a share in the system, if you don't feel like you have a stake in the system, yeah, what incentives do you have to really preserve that system, right? If it's a rotten system, what incentives do you, the people, have to preserve that system, which clearly isn't working for you, it's clearly working for the elite? In the Roman Republic, you had the Gracious twins. These two were instrumental in trying to redistribute land for the people of Rome. Yeah, like think of them like Bernie Sanders or whatever, kind of, right? Like this kind of like share the wealth kind of thing. Both of these brothers, yeah, like were assassinated. Yeah, one a few years before the other, and yeah, very violently and very publicly and stuff, because they challenged like the order of the day and stuff. Yeah, they challenged the elites. But the problem with this is, beside the fact of like, yeah, murdering people for political reasons, yeah, especially for some shady stuff like that, is not on, obviously, yeah. Setting that precedence of like political violence, not to say there's not been political violence throughout America's history and stuff. You only have to see the assassination of multiple different people to recognise that, right? But it still is a thing of, it sets dangerous precedents for how we deal with issues, right? If key people are being assassinated for holding views which challenge the establishment, then it becomes a very kind of difficult thing, becomes a very kind of shady thing, and people start to then lose faith in that system because they think, well, anytime someone comes forward who's trying to like help us out, yeah, they just get stabbed up. So I said the first 400 years of first 400 years of the Roman Republic, yeah, there was like some political stability. There wasn't much war at all. And actually, I have to really thank the YouTube channel Overly Sarcastic Productions. There's a whole bunch of like really good history channels and stuff here, but to do some of the research for this later bit, yeah, I watched like their video on the Roman Republic, so definitely check that out. Looking at all that, it's a thing of, they had 400 years of peace and stability and law and order, and then very quickly you end up having a succession of up to 12 civil wars in the space of just like 100 years. The whole Roman Republic started to become really destabilized, right? You had people rising up, like kind of, you had generals like who would rise up to power and take dictatorial like kind of like rule. You know, by the time you get to Julius Caesar, the Roman Republic is on its last like kind of legs here, and it's really a really like corrupt system. Yeah, it's really like what Julius Caesar basically does. Yeah, like kind of is he basically takes what's left of like the rotten carcass of the thing, and then just kind of just like does like he does kind of what he wants with it. Yeah, because the Constitution is on there on paper, but it's not like respected anymore. He breaks the law multiple different times. So, for instance, like I said before about consuls could only serve a certain amount of time, right? And also as well, if they were a consul, then they would have like kind of immunity, yeah, like legal immunity, meaning like kind of like they couldn't be prosecuted for any crimes. So what Caesar did when it came to the end of his term is he recognised that, oh, generals also are immune from this, right? So he went from being a consul to a general, end up like, you know, doing loads of like wars in like France and stuff, getting glory and getting the support of the military, yeah. And then came back 10 years later and was like, oh yeah, cool, I want to be consul again, yeah. He did things like kind of like that populist things, yeah, like kind of to like win out the people and stuff, yeah. Like so he did lots of reforms that like helped ordinary people and distributed like land and stuff, etc., etc. And you know, this made him very unpopular with the establishment. At the same time, his shady kind of movements, yeah, like kind of really delegitimized the problem. And then there was another like civil war which he was involved in, etc. And after becoming victorious, kind of at the end of that, he ends up being offered the title of dictator for life. And at that point there, the senators in Rome just go, hold on, this is the end of the republic, yeah, like kind of this man is now a dictator for life, okay? This is kind of the only times when someone's been able to be a dictator for any amount of time, it's just been a very temporary thing in extraordinary circumstances. This man is now a dictator for life. For all intents and purposes, he's now the king. We were for a king all these centuries ago, and now we've got this new person who's basically a king. So this is where if you like read or watch Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, this is what you see. When you see like the assassination of Julius Caesar, yeah, by Brutus and by the others, yeah, it's to do with this, yes. It's a mixture of jealousy and it's also a mixture of we need to protect the republic, yeah, from being overthrown. What ended up happening is Julius Caesar getting killed, but because Julius Caesar's like fan base here was so strong, because he had such a loyal support within the army and within the people of Rome, it meant that even though this last gasp of the republic as such had overthrown this tyrant, it meant that actually his supporters, yeah, like Mark Antony, and Augustus and etc., they could take up the mantle of it, right? So it didn't matter that Caesar was dead, because now you've got a whole bunch of people who are like on the same side as Caesar, yeah, who are come to avenge him. After that civil war ends up being concluded, this is now the complete fall of the Roman Republic, and this is where you get Augustus. Oh, actually, there's another civil war after that as well. But you end up having Augustus becoming the emperor, right? Caesar had shown during his time that actually having a strong, like kind of like authoritarian figure was able to like maintain some level of law and order in Rome, was able to get some sort of like things done for the people, was able to actually like effectively govern and stuff. And at this point, the Republic had basically come apart. Parallels between the Roman Republic and the American Republic now should be quite striking and should be quite obvious for quite a lot of people. We're not at the point yet of like the collapse of America as a world power. That's not for many centuries like to come, I don't think, right? It takes an extraordinary amount of like bad luck and bad decisions by very incompetent or negligent or just downright like villainous people, yeah, to actually get America to the point where it's like basically a third world country or something, and the whole like thing's just collapsing in itself. At the same time, the republic that America is found in, yeah, is starting to show some serious cracks, and the power of the government, the power of the president, the power, like the disregard for many aspects of the checks and balances, a lot of things are starting to come away at the seam. And it wouldn't take very much, I believe, for a charismatic general or a charismatic, because like I said in the last video, yeah, the army is very much respected still. The armed forces are very much respected in America. All it would take would be a very charismatic general, just as you had President Jackson, just as you had President Eisenhower. Not saying that either one of them were a dictator yet, but Jackson, if you look into the history of President Jackson, yeah, he had many shaky kind of things that were kind of similar to what I'm talking about. If it gets to the point where someone's popular enough and they have the army and they have like kind of the support of the people, etc., they could just do what Caesar did and just completely disregard the constitution, because no one's paying attention to it anyway. if I have to do the X, Y, Z to kind of like to overturn it, well, so be it. Yeah, like people will still support this person, right? It becomes very dangerous at this point, and America is not that far off. It's not impossible to imagine these series of events happening over the next like 50 to 100 years. We can clearly see some of these things could literally happen within the next 10 years. It wouldn't be impossible. No one expected like the American Revolution to pop off as it did. No one expected the Civil War to pop off as it did. There's a whole bunch of things in history which, if you were sat 5 years before it happened, you could see inklings of it and stuff, but you wouldn't have guessed that things could descend into hell and into chaos, yeah, that quickly. But they can. History has taught us this. So it's something to be very mindful of, to learn the lessons from the fall of the Roman republics. In this final bit, we're going to try and look at some of the things of what America could do, potentially, at a fundamental level to try and restore their republic, to get back to some sort of respect for a constitution, what could potentially be done about it. And I know, yes, I'm a British person, like, so mind my own business and all that stuff, it's not my place, but I think looking into some of the things, I think there's cross-party, non-partisan kind of like solutions to this problem, potentially. Right, so I think there are three things that we have to really think of. I think without some sort of inkling towards this way, I don't really see how we kind of like draw back from this, right? The first being, somehow, whether you're left or right, there has to be some sort of way in which we reduce income inequality and get it so that middle class people's wages start to recover from where they were, because for most of the post-war period up until about the mid-1970s, yeah, wages went up with productivity. Around 1975 you see that it's pretty much like flatlined in that time. Somehow we're going to have to work out a way, and I'm not going to go into too many details in terms of how I personally think it could be done. The left wing of the political spectrum would say tax the rich, yeah, like kind of, so it'd be like kind of a top-down kind of thing in terms of like taking money from the rich and then distributing it. So other people would say like kind of like that it needs to be a more bottom-up thing. So it needs to be a thing of how do we increase the wages of people at the bottom? How do we cut the tax burden on people at the bottom? How do we make life easier for the people at the bottom? Because however you do it, whether you take a bit off the top, whether you like lift people up from the bottom, that's the only way to really like reduce income inequality. And there's going to be a certain level of inequality, right? That's built in with any system, whether it's communism or capitalism. Yeah, like people get this very confused. The point is not about having complete equality, right? Because that's unattainable, and no free society can go down that road entirely. And also, as well, as I've said before, the paradox of equality is that like it ends up being a thing of some animals are more equal than others, right? In the sense of it would require a tiny elite of people to decide what is deemed as equal and what's like not deemed as equal. So even in a utopian system, there's always going to be flaws with this, right? But having the inequality, the gap between the rich and the poor be so great, at that point there, it really starts to destabilize the system, because people at the top end up becoming very corrupt and make the laws that suit themselves, and people at the bottom go, well, it's a rigged system anyway, so we've got no stake in the system. So capitalism, democracy, whatever, it doesn't really benefit us. Like this, let's overthrow it, right? If people don't feel like they have a stake in something, why are they gonna like risk their life and limb to try and uphold it? They're not, right? Somehow that needs to be dealt with. The second thing, in my opinion, is this: the expectations that Americans have for their president and for their government in general somehow needs to be like addressed. The founding fathers never intended for the president to have this much sway. It shouldn't matter so much who becomes president. The Constitution puts in restrictions and puts limits and checks and balances on the power of the president. At the same time, there probably need to be more. There probably need to be more ways in which a charismatic, strong person cannot simply just come in and offer people like bread and circuses, as the Romans said, and just kind of win the people over with just populist things, yeah, and rise up. Because all it takes is, you can have someone who's principled doing that, or you could have someone who's a complete charlatan doing that. But regardless, that's once you go down that road, it's curtains for that civilization. And then the third thing I would say is the federal government in general it shouldn't have as much power as it does, and the American kind of military should not be as overstretched as it is. I think that Americans really need to think who are their core allies, and I think they need to think from first principles what is the role of government in general, and they need to think about what is the role of the federal government. The 10th Amendment says that all power is not delegated to the federal government. Yeah, it should go to the people and to the states. And I think whether you're left wing or right wing, I think that there's very strong arguments for that. I think that if California wants to have very high taxes and Texas wants to have very low taxes, having the laboratory of democracy as such, in terms of different states try different things, and people go, oh, I like that, oh, that worked in that state, let's try it in this state and stuff, and oh, it didn't really work there, so we've learned that lesson. Rather than this kind of blanket thing of trying to put it over all the different states at a time, because I think that the Federalists, when they were writing their constitution, they lived in a very different time, and they couldn't foresee with the rise of technology and with interconnectivity and all the rest of it. Yeah, they couldn't foresee how America was going to end up becoming this. In hindsight, the argument for federalism is not as strong as the founding fathers would have in hindsight. I think if they look back at it, a lot of them would have regretted the way in which they wrote it, and they would have regretted the emphasis they had on building this strong central government. The anti-federalists, with their arguments for greater state right, yeah, it's all very well having a strong military and stuff, and a unified military, and some sort of way of collecting all the different taxes and paying down the debts of the nation and stuff, yeah. But beyond that, it's a thing of, I don't think that the founders would have really liked the way that the federal government has grown in relation and to the states. I think that most of the states are pretty big as it is, right? They're entities within themselves, and I think that them having a lot more power and the federal government having a lot less power would probably be a better balancing act. Although there is the argument, obviously, that having such different systems in different states, yeah, could help tear the country more and more apart, because going from one state to the next, it becomes more and more varied. Yeah, at the same time, it allows safety valves. It allows having a one size fits all policy. Yeah, doesn't really work, because different regions and different states and different people want different things. Having a system that's more flexible, having a system that focuses more on the states trying different things, yeah, rather than federal government, I think works better. And I think state governments are more accountable than federal governments. And I think that this applies not just to America, but to the whole world. I think that having power coming down more and more to people and being more and more accountable, I think is a good thing. And I think that a lot of the problems, a lot of the alienation that people feel, and a lot of the kind of dispossession that people feel, whether they're on the left or the right, I think stems from the fact of people don't feel like they're in control, and they don't feel like they have a stake in the system. And watch out, because if you start going down that road, then everything that you've built is going to collapse. So yeah, I think I'll probably be here all day if I was suggesting more things. And like I said, I don't want to become too party political with this. I don't want to be too ideological with this. And let me know what you think in the comment section. Yeah, if you think that what I'm saying is nonsense, yeah. If you think that I've missed things with this, if you think I've got things wrong, please let me know, yeah, in the comment section. I'd really as long as it's respectful. Some of the comments in some of the videos, yeah, some of them are just YouTubers kind of deleted a bunch of them, yeah, but some of them were just complete nonsense. In terms of, I'll just be real, some of them saying things that a complete opposite of what I was kind of advocating in the video, some very, very partisan, the world's going to end, they're kind of they're all evil or whatever. Just no, this take that nonsense somewhere else. Yeah, this channel is not for that. So yeah, anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble on about the Constitution, and ramble on about the future of America and all the rest of it. I'm not an American, but I do appreciate the country, and I do respect the impact that's had in the world. And I do think that people who want a better alternative to the alternatives, yeah, so the alternatives being authoritarian top-down states where might is right and it doesn't matter what people want and stuff, yeah. I think that being the alternative, I think that America is the best one. Not perfect, it could be a lot better, and I think even most people in America would agree it could be a lot better. But I'm under no illusions that if America collapses under the weight of its divisions and inability for it to fix some of these problems, yeah, I think that if that happened, I think that the world in general will be a much worse place. So with that being said, don't forget, as I said, like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned for future videos, and yeah, don't forget to hit us up in the comment section and stuff, and share this with your friends, man. Share this with your friends. Hopefully you learned some things. Hopefully I've straightened some things out for you about Constitution. I know it was a bit confusing. Stay tuned for next time, and bye.